Hi, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday, February 27th. Call the meeting to order at 6:01. We have a roll call, please, Beth?
Select Chair, Mr. DeRoche.
Excused?
Select Vice Chair, Mr. Coy.
Here?
Selectman, Mr. Britton.
Here.
Selectman, Mr. Gifford.
Here.
And please note for the record, we have Town Manager, Mr. Colby, present. We also have Mr. Forbes from Underwood Engineers, and we have a gentleman from New Hampshire DES. Thank you.
And if we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Standing.
Before we get started, I just want to make one sad announcement. Bernadine Fitzgerald passed away last week. Many of you probably know Bernadine from many years working in the town. Her husband was an ex-fire chief in town and a postmaster. She also served as for the town of Plaistow as a treasurer from 1994 until 2010, and also several committees, budget committee, old home day, cemetery, many other numerous activities in town. And if we could just take a quick moment of silence, please. All right, thank you.
I would like to say that Bernadine and her husband, John, very few people in this town, very few couples in this town have performed civic duties that could possibly even begin to match what Bernadine and John did for this town.
Thank you. And is there any public comment out there other than for on the water? Okay, not. We'll get to that. What I'd like to do is we need to open up a public hearing. This would be to consider accepting the housing opportunity grant the planning board applied for. It should be in all your packets. Hopefully you've had a chance to read it. This is a grant that the planning board applied for to receive a grant for $50,000. What this will go towards is to help with the master plan when it comes to the housing section, and there'll be some other surveys and things like that, and it would help pay for any of that. Are there any questions or anything on it?
No.
Did you have anything to add, Greg?
No, like I said, it's to assist municipalities looking to increase housing opportunities through community engagement and regulatory change.
Right, and we can use
It's
it
a phase one of a
three-phase approach, and
yes.
and it can go to that section of the master plan too.
Before we get started, Greg, normally this place is colder than a mother-in-law's kiss, but tonight it's hotter than the 7 fires of hell. Is there any way you can turn the heat down a little bit?
Let me look into it.
Okay, thank
You're
you.
speaking in your microphone when you use it. You need a draft motion?
Yes, please.
I move for RSA 31:95-B to accept the $50,000 housing opportunity planning grant awarded to the planning boards. The grant awarded is provided by Invest New Hampshire Municipal Planning and Zoning Grant Program, funded by the New Hampshire Department of Business and Economic Affairs as part of the $100 million Invest New Hampshire initiative with an ARPA state fiscal recovery funds. I further move that the Rockingham Planning Commission be selected as the consultant to the planning board for the implementation of the grant, and that town manager Colby be authorized to sign the grant contract.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion on it?
Nope.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 300. Okay, and with that, next up, we'll move up into the water department discussion. Jeannie, you ready? Well, And just so everyone knows, this is obviously in discussion for the letter that had gone out to the
Yes.
different residents. Questions arose from that, and hopefully we can get some clarification.
Yeah, what I'd like to do, first of all, let me introduce Cindy
Sure.
Clevens, professional engineer working with the Department of Environmental Services. Also,
You're in here, you, I'm sorry.
I'll try to speak
All right.
up. Cindy Clevens is a professional engineer with the Department of Environmental Services, Drinking Water and Groundwater Bureau. Also in back there is Dr. Patelli, toxicologist with the department. But I have a brief presentation that I hope will shed some light on why a violation notice was issued and what it all means. So let me start with my slideshow.
Can you folks see that screen up there okay? All right, great.
Really flip the screen around for him.
So, as noted, I'm going to be talking about the violation notice that was issued February 8th. What I'd like to do is just really focus on these questions that I think shed some light. Obviously, you may have other questions we can get to. I'll be talking about what HA5s are, haloacetic acids, how they're regulated, why are they here in our Plaistow water system, what are we doing to address the issue, and what else can we do as we move forward. So first, what are they? Haloacetic acids. First of all, I should point out that there's a fact sheet that I distributed, and I left copies up there on the table. The fact sheet goes into a lot more detail than I will tonight. I encourage you to read it. Talks a bit about how they're formed in more detail, what kinds of acids. There are really 5 that are prevalent, and these are common in drinking waters that are provided that start with surface waters. They're very rarely prevalent in any groundwater wells, but where water starts from a surface water, a river, or a pond, it's where we see the precursors that cause these HAA5s. And what they are is they're a product of disinfection. It's a byproduct of the disinfection product. Now, most systems in the U.S. and here in New Hampshire often use free chlorine to disinfect their wastewater, or they'll use a process known as chloramination. Free chlorine reacts differently with organic material than does chloramination, monochloramines, which I'll talk about a little bit later. I don't want to get into a chemistry class here, but it's important to note that the type of disinfection process does have an impact on the formation of the byproducts that we're talking about. And they occur, like I said, because of a reaction with the organics that are in water. Now, no matter how well you treat water, there oftentimes is, an organic component. Oftentimes it's dissolved, kind of like a weak tea, if you will. You'll see coloration in surface waters. There can also be particulate matter. All these organic materials, whether it's leaves or just a dissolved component, are the precursors that react with free chlorine. So the other factor I want you to think about and recognize that time is a factor here as well, as is temperature. But the longer the organic materials are in contact with the free chlorine, there can be a continued formation that will occur. So you don't see it all instantaneously upon disinfection. Some of the reactions, depending on the organic materials involved, can take many days to really fully, create the byproducts. Regulations of note, I think the most significant thing we're talking about here is the federal standard of 60 parts per billion. This is calculated as a yearly average, and there's an administrative rule with the state of New Hampshire, and Cindy can correct me if I misstate any of the New Hampshire regulations, but this rule requires the notification when the violation is recognized. So even though we don't have a year of operation, The one sample that exceeded 60 was cause for this violation to go out. So why are they here in Plastow's system to begin with? The water sources, like I said, are most impactful if they come from surface water. And the disinfection process and use is important to note. Manchester water comes from the Merrimack River. Well, actually, it comes from the Lake Massabesic now. In the future, will become from Merrimack River. They utilize a process called chloramination so that they can minimize the formation of disinfection byproducts. Water comes down through Derry, through Windham, into Salem. In Salem, it's blended again with other treated waters. Those waters primarily come from surface waters that, again, have those precursors for haloacetic acids. And then the Hampstead Area Water Company is the last stop before getting to Plastow. Here, we see Hampstead Area Water Company sources are primarily groundwater sources. So that actually helps bring the levels down, but we still have a mixing and blending of all of these systems. And the thing with Hampstead Area Water Company, they utilize a free chlorine disinfection process, which again is the most reactive in terms of formation of haloacetic acids. Another factor why they're here in Plastow at this time, why we're seeing them, is the low consumption at the start. We started off in the first connection occurred August 31st. The first testing, which I'll get into, occurred in October. That testing, at the time of operations of the testing, we were probably running at about 21,600 gallons per day of consumption. Now that's too low. We know that, and there are other issues relative to flushing and use that I'll get into in a moment. The data that we had looks like this. October 5th was the compliance testing that was referenced in the notice of violation. Remember the sample or the limit of 60 parts per billion? We came at 139.4, so it's significantly higher than expected. We resampled it again because there had been some flushing going on. There had been some more hookups. We sampled it again nearly 3 weeks later. It's already going down. On the 17th of January, it was sampled again. And I'll get into more why we did that sample. And then it was sampled just last week, and it will be continued to be sampled on a weekly basis because of what's happening in Salem. Salem, and I should have probably mentioned on the previous slide, Salem has traditionally used a chloramination process for disinfecting. But for other reasons relating to nitrogen and nitrates, they went to a free chlorine system of operation beginning after the first of the year, and they just converted back to chloramination last Tuesday. Now, while they are at that free chlorine basis, we recognize that there's really very little hope of getting a significant reduction in our numbers. So we didn't do a lot of testing, knowing that the changeover on the 21st will occur, and that should bring down the precursors, if you will, the disinfection byproducts as they enter Hampstead Area Water System. So that's important to note, that date of the 21st. We are starting immediately after that with weekly testing. These are non-compliant testing, but these will help us judge the flushing needs and the cleaning needs that go on with time as we expect these numbers to drop. So what have we been doing to address this issue? As I mentioned, the formation of HA5s really is a reaction that occurs with the organics in the system. We tried our best to flush things out and clean the tank that was constructed, but keep in mind that the original use of this distribution system was a surface use for just untreated surface water that came from your fire suppression system. So there's naturally a lot of organics in that material. So we increased flushing, trying to get more and more certain that all those organics were out. We also had the town also hired a cleaning company to go into the Sweet Hill tank in December to do a thorough cleaning and vacuuming of the tank. During that inspection and cleaning, they did see that there was still some organic material on the floor of the tank up on Sweet Hill Road. And so the other thing, Salem will be returning to chloramination, and we've identified this need to do weekly testing and flushing. We'll continue to see that this gets below the required threshold. Now, we don't really have a treatment system here. We're taking the water that comes to us, but we still have some other tools in the toolbox if they are needed. We will continue to increase the flushing to get that age of the system fresher, to push out any organics that might still remain in the system. The more users we have, the fresher that water is. The fresher that water is, the less likely HA5s will be a problem. And at the last resort, we don't want to go to this unless we need to. We do have the capability, the equipment's there, the technology's there, to go to a chloramination system here in Plaistow. Chloramination is a combination of chlorine and ammonia that uses a monochloramine as a primary disinfectant. That we don't feel is necessary or wise while we're getting, from Hampstead Area Water Company, water that's already using a free chlorine base for disinfection. But that's another tool in our toolbox, and we are prepared to do that if necessary. But we believe that with the changeover in Salem, with the trend that we already see of increased use, of increased flushing, bringing it down very close to compliance already, we think that we'll be in compliance by the end of this quarter. Our next testing is scheduled for the second week in March. That's the compliance testing that will dictate whether or not we are seeing what we need to see. So that's a background of what we have seen here, what we've been doing. Cindy Clevens, as I said, is here from DES so that you can get their perspective as a regulator. Dr. Patali is here to answer any questions relative to health effects. That's his area of expertise as a toxicologist. I can certainly answer more questions relative to the operation and design of your system.
Yeah, I would think probably the big one is probably what the health effects are. Where it was so high. It's coming down, which is great. But I think that would be the big one. If Jonathan, if you can answer that.
You want me to get him a chair?
Wheelchair around?
Yeah.
Or you could just sit right there too. It doesn't make a difference.
Always like the exercise. That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, hi there. Let me make sure, am I talking to this?
No,
you all can hear?
It'll pick you up, so don't worry about
Oh,
that. Just
well, then,
as long as you're close enough to it.
okay, and folks back there can hear me if I'm talking forward because I realize it's projecting back. Okay, bar voice. Bar voice. Okay. So with these compounds, so when you see the phrase HAA5, that's an acronym because in regulatory realm and in science realm, we love acronyms more than anything. So that stands for the haloacetic acids 5. There's basically multiple compounds in there. So when you say what the health effects are of these, there's actually about 5 of them that we recognize that as basis for that 60. So when we look across these, they have a myriad of different health effects. And one of the things that depends on is concentration that's in the water, because the main way that these chemicals get into your body is through ingestion. So at these levels, even at higher levels, slightly higher levels, really the main way that these chemicals can get into your body to do harm is through ingestion. At much higher concentrations, they may present a risk for like skin contact, but at these lower concentrations, it's not something that's really going to be well absorbed through the skin or volatilized, for example, like if people are taking a shower. That's not to say that there is no exposure from that way, but relative to the amount that you get from drinking in water or, for example, cooking with food that's prepared with that, the main way that these get into the body is through ingestion. So as a toxicologist, that's one of the things I always try to start with is just an understanding of what uses of the water or how is this getting in. So before I talk about what it does when it gets in, does anyone have any questions about that?
I think the only question I have is, it's bottom line, okay? This is the level we're at now. How safe or unsafe is it for they to ingest water?
So at these levels, it is above the standard. So if people were consuming the water for several years, there could be an increased risk of a background for certain cancers, namely bladder cancer is the main form of cancer that is suspected to be associated with these compounds. Depending on which ones are in the mixture, if there was long-term exposure and you had what we call high-end users, so people that consume very large amounts of water, things like liver stress, possibly certain neurological effects could manifest over time. But again, at these concentrations, it'd be more with chronic exposure, not with what we call acute or short-term exposure. So something on the matter of weeks, we wouldn't really see those health effects manifest at these concentrations.
How about people that already have an illness?
So people with pre-existing conditions for these, so with cancer, we wouldn't really lump that in with something that would perpetuate cancer, or let me try to clarify that better. So if someone already has cancer, cancer is a disease of latency. So usually if folks have it, it's been lingering there for a while. Cancer doesn't develop overnight. So it's not something that this is really going to push.
I'm not asking that, though. I'm saying somebody has a precondition of cancer, let's say. How would this water affect them as it stands right now?
So with certain things like liver disease, it might exacerbate certain forms of liver disease. But as far as a lot of other health conditions go, that hasn't been studied with these compounds, primarily because a lot of the epidemiological studies that try to tease that out aren't designed in a way to answer that question.
So you really can't answer that?
No, it's based on the available information. We don't know exactly how it would exacerbate those conditions.
That's what I need to know. Thank you.
And that's it, the current levels that are there now could exacerbate these.
I think
Any
what we
conditions?
need to
I'm just trying to-
remember is this was a sample in October.
Yep.
They have a decrease, there was actions taken immediately. The levels have been decreasing and are expected to decrease. So the exposure really has been since October to now, say.
So
till
February
March.
22nd sampling
So
may
3
be
months,
normal.
4 months, so November, October, November, December, January, 5 months. That's a short-term exposure. What the health effects of these compounds are over many years of ingesting the water with elevated levels. And that's why these compounds are regulated based on a running annual average. A one-time, because with the seasons and with the temperature, the water temperature, the levels change. So often during the summer months, the levels are higher. And that's okay, because as long as your running annual average is below the 60 parts per billion, that is not a violation in the system. So based on the 4-quarter, 365 days of the year average, that's the way these are measured. And I also want to mention, so this was one sample, so that's why the violation was issued. It's because that was taken as the average for the year. There was only one sample. So there will be additional samples. We've talked with Jean and with your operator to maybe go to monthly samples. That will allow you to have to correct that average sooner rather than waiting until 1 year. But the way these are regulated, you will be receiving another notice for quarter one, even if the levels that we expect in March will be lower, should be close to the 60 or lower possibly, we expect. So even if the levels are lower, this violation will still be incurred, and the public notice will need to go out for at least quarter one and probably quarter two, which is through June 30th. And the reason is, but there'll be notification in that communication as to what the current levels are, so that people know today this is what you're drinking. So yes, you did have a period of 5 months where it was above the 60, but today this is what the water is. So you will have that information available.
Well, the last testing was 79, as I recall, on your slide.
I should make clear that there are compliance testing and then there's operational.
I understand that, but
That was a operational.
what I'm saying is you have another test on the 22nd. You're waiting to find out what it is. doesn't fall into your compliance
But it
testing.
will be important for you to know what the levels
Absolutely.
are and for the public to review that
Right.
information. And I believe you are submitting those to the state, even though they're non-compliance. So they're available on the DES One Stop. That's publicly available
Okay.
for people to review.
And now as we add more users, our flushing ability will be higher and the water
Rate
will.
will drop. Right now, it's my understanding that the data shows that you're just under 40,000 gallons a day, around 37 or so. It's been steadily increasing. We're still making connections. There's still some very large connections that are planned in later this year when the weather changes. For example, one was approved for 20,000 gallons in the Flint Ridge area. We had our companies, before I came on board, in the early stages of planning for Plastow's water system, estimated that until you get to a level of about 40,000 gallons a day, you're going to need to continue to flush and keep that water fresh. It's important because not just because of the formation of byproducts, but also because of the need to maintain a residual, which is a requirement for that disinfection process, to maintain a residual throughout your system and deal with bacteria. So we have recommended since day one of planning here that you be at that level to be able to just have a better control or a better water quality to be distributed to all your customers.
One of the questions that Greg had asked me to report today is other water systems in New Hampshire that are also experiencing elevated disinfection byproducts. And at any one time, obviously, these are standards that the state enforces compliance, but these are not simple compounds to maintain at the levels because of that balance that we have to keep between natural organics, which is, as Jean explained, that's part of any natural water source, especially surface waters like Lake Massabesic and the lakes from Salem. They have natural organic material precursor that reacts with the chlorine, and we use chlorine in order to keep the water fresh and disinfected for bacteria and virus protection. So we are always walking that balance between proper disinfection, microbiological disinfection, and controlling the byproducts that are formed. So that's the balance that all our water systems have to maintain on a regular basis. With the seasons, it changes because of the water temperature, but also the regulations have changed slightly. So we are now into initially it was allowed to do a system-wide average years ago. So all the samples were averaged, and that was the determination for compliance. That has changed now more recently so that we're in compliance at every single sampling location that is collected. So that has meant that more systems in New Hampshire have been in violation. And in order to address that, they are having to implement some significant upgrades to their water treatment facilities. So two of them that we have in violation, in repeated violation, one is New Hampton Village Precinct. They've been in violation now over 2 years. Because both with THMs and halocidic acids, because they need to do significant investment to the filtration process to improve their organics removal, and that's very costly and complicated. So each step, pH, coagulant type, the filtration media, all of those things need to be optimized in order to get there. So 2 years running, and we're still not there with New Hampton. The second one that is in violation is Jackson Water Precinct. Same thing. They're trying different coagulants to try to optimize their process to reduce to try to return to compliance. And then we also have a few groundwater systems that have in and out of compliance. And the reason there is water age, mostly water age. So the very small systems, there's one school, for example, Over the winter, they use less water, so the water sits in the tank. Sort of what happened here in Plastow. You had the reduced water used from the tank, and so it was sitting for a longer period of time. And when the water sits with the disinfection, it is going to be cooking these byproducts. So that has occurred at some small systems, and they've been in violation because over the winter there was little use, and they exceeded the standards. So they have to go to quarterly sampling, they have to do flushing, and that's how we address the products. But it's not just Plastow. This is a common thing that has to be addressed in just about any water system.
And, you know, you bring up a good point that I think is worth stressing too. With the regulations as they are now, we had to establish a sampling point that represented the oldest water in the system. And that's at Sweet Hill Tank. I don't have all the results here, but on the day of October 25th, when the Sweet Hill Tank tested at 97.6, at Westville Apartments, which, you know, is where it's on the route up there, if you will, close to it, it actually tested within the acceptable range, at 52.3. The closer you are to the source of water entering your system, the less likely it is that you would even experience a number over 60. But our requirements, or the state's requirements to sample for the worst case scenario, should be stressed, because particularly the way water is being consumed now, the neighborhoods where they're being consumed, and how flow is modeled or flows through the system is important to recognize. And it's another thing we didn't put on the bullet for. We actually worked with the operator to modify the route of the directional flow to get to the tank quicker, to help keep that flushing action take place. And we used our computer model of the distribution system to identify a way that would achieve a more direct route to the tank without impacting fire flow. We talked with the chief, your fire chief, to sort out a best operational strategy within your distribution system. But you should know that those levels that we see are worst case and not representative of your entire system.
In the Sweet Hill tank's the furthest point away,
It's the furthest and the oldest model water, yes.
and that's the one that's testing the highest, and the further you get away from Sweet Hill, the numbers have been lower?
It's lower as you get closer to the source. The source is coming in at the town hall, or town line with Atkinson, right on East Road.
The East Road pump station.
So that's our first point of entry. And from there, it comes into your distribution system. We have about 14, 15 miles of water system in town. And as it is a network that runs all the way ultimately up to the tank provides for storage to buffer pressures in the event that the tank's out, to provide fire flow in the event of fire. But it does result in a fairly old water up there. That tank is 400,000 gallons.
Mm-hmm.
Now your distribution system volume of those pipes is about another 400,000. So you can imagine if you're trying to get turnover of this water and you're only at 20 or 30,000 gallons a day, that water gets pretty old up there in the tank. And that's why it's picked as the compliance point, because it's the worst case within your system.
What's the testing show at the pump house?
Again, I don't have all the data with me, but on the date that it was taken, the one I do have, I don't know, East Road suction on 10/25 was 22.8.
That was on East Roads, 22.8?
That was on the suction side. For some reason, we discharge side of 27. So it's in the mid-20s, low 20s coming in. That's then. Now, actually, it was higher. I don't want to mislead you in any way. As I said, we tested in January 17th. I don't have those handy with me, I can look them up for you, but my recollection was coming in, it was just marginally passive. And that's because, again, Salem has been using, free chlorine as disinfection. So that is causing higher HAAs throughout Hampstead's system, and what comes into your system, I believe it was in the low 50s.
So was everything pretty good till it got to Salem, and then everything beyond Salem, the numbers got higher?
Just for, again, Salem went to free chlorine on January 3rd. They needed to do that because they were experiencing a problem with nitrification. I don't want to get into too much biology, but the bottom line is that last Tuesday, they went back to a chlorination process, and that will bring the levels of HA5s down.
Is there any way we can rat race the system to keep the water moving?
Not really, because there's no force to move that water around except the pump station at East Road. Moving it doesn't make a difference. It's still old water. You gotta flush it out, discharge it.
Okay, I just thought from stagnation, it would help.
No, the movement is, even if you could, there's no mechanism to force it to move it around.
Okay,
And movement. The other thing is recognize that winter is not a great time to be flushing. That water gets into your drains, freezes, et cetera. So, again, we do have a number of tools. That's one of them to keep it fresh. And we're trying to do as much of that as we can.
Well, I'm doing my fair share. I just got hooked up and I have a 4-bathroom house, so I'm working on it.
All right, helps.
All right, anything, Ed? Any questions?
I do have a few questions.
The best is probably if you could come up just to the mic right there.
Hi, I live on Kelleher Ave here in Plaistow. I have 3 small children that live in my house, and most of the concerns I have is really for them because their long-term exposure is going to exceed mine at this point. One of the questions I have, and I don't know if any of you know this, but I was hooked into the public water, and we were ecstatic. We were really happy about that. We had a contaminated well issue with MBTE, which is known here in Plaistow to contaminate many wells. So the opportunity to be hooked up was really big. But I wasn't hooked up to receive my water until January 19th. So these test dates we're talking about in October and beyond that point, I was never informed of that. I couldn't make the decision for me and my family about my health on which contaminant I wanted. Now I'm in a position where I'm paying for contaminated water, where before I was not paying for water but was contaminated. That's quite honestly a little bit infuriating for me. I think everybody knows the cost of inflation is huge right now, so that's a little bit of an insult. And not having had that information disclosed to me before, that doesn't seem legal to me in any way. I feel like the explanation I'm getting, and I can appreciate the remediation things you're doing, your expert opinion on things, I'm glad you're here to explain that. I had a lot of that knowledge already because everybody has access to the internet at this point. But I feel like we've been used as a guinea pig here unknowingly because now we're saying, well, we've got to keep hooking people up so that this system works better. But the more people you're hooking up that don't know about this, they don't have the choice for their health. Why wasn't I told? Is there somebody who can answer that?
The public notice requires, so when there's a violation that occurs, the letter is issued to the system.
But the letter wasn't issued to me until well after you knew about it. So I have a huge problem with that. So you all knew that this water wasn't good that you're bringing to me. You knew I was contaminated before, and now I'm receiving contaminated water that I'm paying for when everybody knew it was contaminated before I was even hooked up.
So the timeframes that the public notice was issued met the timeframes that are required?
They don't. They absolutely could not. That's bullshit. I'm sorry, but that's crazy. If you knew something was contaminated and then you deliver it to somebody's home without notice and they're using it for several weeks into a month before being notified, that's a huge problem. That's upsetting. That makes my trust in this process completely gone. It's disgusting. I had the choice to get fresh, clean water, and I made that choice only to be using it for a period of time where all of you knew it was contaminated. And there was no explanation of that until a certain date. I don't accept that as okay. And now, are you telling people that are getting hooked up right now, tomorrow, maybe were you notified that your water coming in was going to be contaminated upon coming in, sir?
Only by this notification here.
And were you using the water before that?
I have MTBE just as you did.
Sure.
I drink out of a spring water.
Yep. And that's what we've had to do, and that's fine. But the fact that I didn't know before I was hooked into this, that's not okay. And there's nothing anybody can say to make that okay. And you're hooking up more people who also don't know. I'm watching these crews put more people into this water, and your theory of, oh, the more people, the better, it'll make it better, but they don't know either. So I really would suggest, if I could make any suggestion at all, don't be hooking people up to something you know was contaminated. That's kind of all I came here to say. That's what is so disheartening about these dates that I'm seeing on this slideshow, is you knew it was contaminated beforehand. And I didn't know that. And I should have known that. And I think anybody getting hooked in right now should know that. And what are the efforts that are being put forward right now to make sure that people know, hey, the water you're getting or that we're about to hook you into isn't actually meeting the regulations? Is there an effort to notify those people?
So the reason that the notification is the way that it is because these are concerned only when consumed over many years of your life.
And so if this
Not
keeps
a
happening,
short-term
though,
period. So these levels are being addressed, but the short-term exposure is not a concern from.
I think it's a concern for anybody. Toxic water is a concern. I don't care how long it's being ingested, it's a concern. Don't tell me that just because it's a short period of time, it makes it okay. It doesn't. And I didn't know ahead of time. That's great, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I'm upset. I have to care for my children in this environment. We thought this was the answer to a contaminated issue we already had, and now we have another issue. So we've already been exposed for who knows how long. And does this keep happening? And how many times does this keep happening? Because it sounds like it's a pretty common issue with this water system. So how long are we looking at, you know? You say, oh, well, the numbers are going down.
We expect that in March.
And I hope so.
The next sample, it will be in compliance.
But I hope that, you know, these people that are hooking in need to be notified. There's no excuse for that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I too live on Kelleher Avenue.
Could you just give Beth your name, please?
I too live on Kelleher Avenue.
She just needs your name for the.
Oh, my name is Chris Shaka,
That's all.
SCIACCA. I've lived in my home for 26 years, and I too was part of the contaminant from the gasoline. I had a state water filter system put in about 5 years after I bought my house. So I had been drinking contaminated water for 5 years before it was even discovered that the state system needed to be put in. As with Shelley, I was hooked up in November. So from the dates that we're looking at, I've been drinking contaminated water since November. What I want to know is why I received 2 letters in the same day, not different days, the same day, one with the level of detection that was contaminated at 0.139, which is over double the legal limit. And then they sent out one at the same exact time saying the revised number was at 0.60. I have them right here. Both letters I received on the same day from the town.
There was an update, but it wasn't the number. I'm not sure what the revision was. I did see there was a revised notice. I think maybe that you.
I have a revised number of 0.060.
That's the standard. That's the standard. No, the number is 0.139.
Which is what was detected when it was.
Detected in
Okay, so I was hooked up in November, and when was this first test done?
October 5th.
So I have been drinking I am a cancer survivor. I don't care what the guidelines are, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 3 years, 6 years, 20 years. The choice for my own health was taken out of my hands. And it was put into this system, which I thought was going to be the answer to a huge issue, especially if I want to sell my home. That was the reason, the biggest reason that I went on town water simply because I did not want to have to disclose the contamination should I sell my house. Well, guess what? Today, if I want to sell my house again, I still have to I have to let people know that it's contaminated water. I personally drink 64 ounces of water every day. Times that by how many days this was over the legal limit, and tell me that I shouldn't worry. How can you explain that? Why were we not notified when it was very, very first detected? Our right to choose was taken away. I have a grandbaby who is drinking the water. Unacceptable. The town has not stepped up to help us. We are now purchasing what I can speak for myself. I'm purchasing water because I have a filter system that is got bad stuff in it. How is that right? Why is the town not stepping up and helping us? I was told by one of the selectmen that to get the water to go through faster, as you said, flushing the fire hydrants. Why hasn't that happened? Nothing. As on our side, we see nothing as being done. And we are the hotspot. There are 60 plus homes in our area that are contaminated, either with a gasoline additive or now with HAA5. I want to know what the town's going to do to help us right now. That's what I want to know.
The highest reading was up at the tank. Closer to your home would be near the East Road, which was Gene, would you say it was at 22, the most recent?
That's not the most recent. The most recent was actually just under the 60.
The 60.
50 something. I don't recall what that was. But in October, at the earlier test dates, it was much lower. And again, that's because it was coming in at a lower level
From where?
Hampstead Area Water Company. They're the last supplier that we use to the town. And they get their water from Salem and from their own wells in their system. They go to a free chlorine approach. They started seeing significantly elevated levels, just like we did, coming in. But the levels coming in rose, at the best of our knowledge, after the town of Salem went to free chlorine disinfection.
So is that a fact or an excuse?
That was January 3rd. Is when they switched over.
Okay.
So I don't have data for that period after January 3rd until we sampled again on the 17th, I think it was. And
January 17th, tested again in violation.
I probably have, but the levels coming in at that point were still fairly low. They were, memory serves, they were well under, I think
They were in the what?
in the 30s, I believe. But they started, right, we don't have data until again, I think about the 17th, it was 50 coming in. But on the 25th, that's the date I'm struggling, I think it was in the 30s.
25th of which month?
Of October. So
Last year.
We only have the 3 dates. 2 of those were preceding the switch over in Salem. And after Salem switched over, we had 1 data point where the elevated levels coming into the system were observed. They were still in compliance, but they were elevated just under 60, they were in the 50s, 53 I believe. So we saw that effect from the Salem change. We're very optimistic that the effect will be reversed now that they go back to a chloramination process.
So should I be optimistic or pessimistic that my cancer may return because I've been drinking contaminated water before I was even hooked up? And as Shelley said, we weren't given that choice. I would have kept my state filter system. I want my state filter system back. I want off-town water. I will never trust the results again, ever. We were deceived. And I'd like to add, we have someone here from Underwood as well. That's you. I emailed Joshua.
He hasn't worked for us since.
Okay, sir, then that's an excuse. Then his email should have been forwarded to someone who took over his job. He first emailed me in August asking me if I would let my house be to be tested twice a year. I have that right here. So I did not respond to him until after I was hooked up. I wanted to see how it went. The very first week that I was hooked up, I have 2 dogs that were sick. And the smell, may I read you what I wrote to him? Because this was on November 30th. Hello, Joshua. I was waiting to reply until after I was hooked up. I'm not sure whom I need to talk to about this problem I have right now with the water. The smell and taste of chlorine and bleach is terrible. I mean terrible, and it does not go away letting the water run. I have let people actually smell my water bottle, and they are blown away at how high the chlorine smell was. I would also like to add that both of them ended up getting sick, but at this time it was one of my dogs had diarrhea within the first 24 hours of drinking this water. Now I have to purchase water for my animals and myself. What is it? I'd like to know how the town is going to address this. And as far as him not getting back to me, I was told by the Selectmen that he was on leave. That's what I was told. He was on leave. Jay DeRoche told me he was on leave. And I spoke with Jay last week. And I said, well, why weren't his emails forwarded to, because I asked that, please forward my information so that that this can be addressed, because it was terrible. The smell was awful.
Well, one thing I would like to point out is we do not operate the system. The town has a contract operator who runs the system. All I could have done, even if I had seen that, is turn your complaint over there.
Which is what I was asking.
And the thing is that if the chlorine level is beyond what it's supposed to be, that's an operational issue. I have no knowledge of it. I don't know what was going on that day that you experienced. I don't know if it's still being experienced today. There are controls that we designed into the system at the East Road Pump Station that allows the operator to precisely regulate the amount of chlorine in the water. And it's that operational aspect that, and I'm not trying to pass the buck, but I have no control of it. That's an operational issue that the town needs to address with their operator. So
if I had sent this email to you, you would have directed me to my town.
I would have shared it with the town manager, Mr. Cole.
So how did that get messed up? Like, you knew about it before the first test was done well before we were hooked up, but.
Are we addressing the email or are we addressing something else?
Well, you can't address the email because it never got forwarded. So, right. And I'm not holding you personally responsible, but in this email, I had asked where to turn. Had I known that this person was no longer with the company, as I was told he was just on leave.
Actually, I think he left in October.
Okay. Again, I don't understand why his stuff wasn't forwarded to whoever maybe replaced him or was taking over his workload. But my biggest concern this day going forward is what is going to be done to make the people whole right now that are still having to purchase bottled water. You can't boil HAA5 out of water. Am I correct in saying that? So I can't even, thank you. I can't even boil my water to get it out. I shower in it. I brush my teeth. Where do we go from here? How do the people that are being affected, and as you said, Shelley, the ones that are going to be hooked up tomorrow that don't know, where do we go from here? How do we trust the source?
I think one of the first things we have to bring into this, and it's not here, is the water company that's managing our water, to see how they're testing and
Gene is in constant contact with them, and he has explained the process that we are going through. We are going to be testing on a weekly basis. We're going to be doing flushing. Salem has changed, so all those factors are going to combine. We're almost under the 60 right now.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that we should be under it, and we're hopeful.
Throw out there as an option that we have not talked about, and after hearing this, is that, we're testing as it comes into your system, and we're testing the worst case.
Right.
We can do more testing perhaps in the neighborhood, perhaps in the Kelleher Drive area. I think that it's a leap of rational thinking, perhaps. I don't think it's unfair to think that you're contaminated throughout the system because we have a notice of violation. But I want to stress that notice of violation took place in the most remote system location that we could find. And like I said, that doesn't mean that your water is contaminated on East Road. It doesn't mean that your water is contaminated in Kelleher Drive. It means that the system had a violation at the worst case location, and because of the regulations.
well, I think the very least we should be doing right now is testing at the source, her problem, her source.
Well, we'd be happy to. I think that's not a heavy lift to do additional testing.
I think anybody that has a concern like that, especially over in Kelleher Ave, that you do a test, find out if it's really, if it's contaminated like the rest of it, or it happens to be pretty good, but we don't know that right now. And I think that
Right,
needs to
which is
happen
why we're
sooner
buying,
than later.
we're purchasing our own water right now, and this is costing us money to do this, and it shouldn't be.
The understanding I have is the operator is planning to test every Wednesday. I don't know if that's true every Wednesday or Thursday, but I know it's going to be, we've authorized and talked about weekly tests because we want to see what's happening, particularly at the inlet as it comes into town, and what's happening at the tank where it's.
And I think that has to include.
So I think I can get it tested.
I think that all of us would like our water tested. I can speak pretty much for my neighbors that are here.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, if we could
Well, my next question is, how do we as the public, if we're testing every week, how do we get those numbers?
We will make sure you get that.
yeah, well, is there a way when those come in that we can set up something where it's posted?
Or could we
You know
have
what I
it
mean? Like
mailed to
somewhere on the
us?
town website, monthly, weekly, when those tests come in, if there's a spot where we can put them?
We'll work on it.
Now, is it,
They are posted to the state website.
we have two
also.
neighbors that are right next to each other that are here. Is that correct? You live across the street from all
Well,
three
there's
of you?
three of us.
So basically a gang test in one area, one tank or one water source in that area of testing on, what road was that again?
Kelleher Ave.
Kelleher Ave, would be sufficient to compensate all of those.
We also have a daycare that's at the bottom of the street that was contaminated, their well, and now they're on town. Now you've got a daycare
Mhm.
at the bottom of
Okay,
the
so-
street. That could be a serious.
The other question, how many places in town are being tested now?
The last test that was run, I believe there were 3 locations. Westville Apartments, it's kind of in the middle of things. The tank and the East Road pump station.
So I guess my next question would be, if over on East Road to Westville is below levels, then you would think, if I'm trying to think this logically, everything in between should be okay.
Well,
But though we should still test these homes as
I want
well.
to stress, it's only been since Tuesday that Salem has changed.
Okay,
The chloramination process makes a big difference versus free chlorine.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with the surface water. And Cindy, you're expert at this too, so please correct me if I'm misstating. But my understanding, what I've always learned about formation of HAA5s is that this makes a big difference. Now, they just switched off, and I confirmed this with their operator just this week. They switched, just today I did that, and they switched on Tuesday. They went to a chlorination process. Now, what has been happening for 2 months there, since January 3rd, is their system has been producing water that is probably higher, certainly higher in HA5s. It's going to take some time, and we're going to expect to see a decrease. It's going to be a little gradual. I don't expect it to be overnight. It can't be. The piping systems alone have a volume to them that needs to be flushed out, needs to move along. So the HA5 concentrations are not going to drop overnight, but we do expect them to drop. And we expect them to drop significantly because past history has shown, past data has shown that it has been lower. And, you know, I would say that I'm not going to guarantee until I see the results that even what's coming today is compliant. I don't know that. I suspect it's getting better.
The numbers you've shown, is that the number from the worst case on the Sweet Hill tank, or is that the average of the 3 areas
Numbers I'm
tested?
showing here are Sweet Hill tanks.
It's not an average.
So it's not an
the
average,
sample,
that's
yeah.
just from Sweet Hill, it's not the average.
And that was that one, each individual sample is what's being shown.
The Sweet Hill tank is what we call a compliance sampling location. That's where we are regulated to sample because it was
Okay,
identified
well,
as-
And have
I
the
mean-
other locations been in compliance? It's just the Sweet Hill that's not?
It's a mixed bag. There have been
Okay.
times, actually, I do not think I've seen I have not seen a source out of compliance. I have not seen anything at East Road that's been out of compliance.
So a general synopsis is, a couple of months ago, Salem was having other issues than HA5. They turned and shocked their system, basically went to
Exactly, they did what's
so they
called.
shocked their system, that created that downwash that brought into our system that doesn't have the water turnaround to be able to do that. We noticed
Yeah.
that, we went up and we cleaned our tank, tried to do some mitigation in that form.
I think they
Now,
need to
as
take
we
it a
flush through,
big part of it, yeah.
and they switched back, our water resources should be fine within a month or two. Is that,
I think that's exactly a good summary of what I think is correct.
okay?
But I take exception only in one thing. There was a problem in Salem. And when that problem happened, everybody downstream should have been notified that there's a major problem in Salem. Maybe we have to do something here to take care of that problem that's going to come to us.
We were informed of the switchover. They were doing it for a different reason. They were not in violation of HA5s to my knowledge.
And they're not, it's not a major problem. When chloraminating systems do this chlorine conversion periodically, just as an operational
But if they were
measure.
running above what is state level,
They weren't, no.
Okay.
So they picked 1 month to do a chlorine additional disinfection of their system, notified that they're purchasing the people that they sell the water to, but that's it. They weren't in violation of anything. There's just an operational change of disinfectant for a short period of time, and then they convert back. And that's a common operational tool that chloraminating systems use.
okay.
And although we don't have a lot of data, all the data shows that what they're delivering to the town line here in Plaistow is compliant with HA5s.
So I guess the first step would be is to probably check these folks' houses.
You can do that.
Okay, let's see where you actually are at this point in the game, and then we'll react to that. If it's out of compliance and you can't use the water, then I'm sure the board will talk about whatever we have to do to help you guys out.
Thank you. Oh, yes.
I have nothing else.
No, then as we get results,
You
we'll
guys have done
post.
a great job
Yeah.
informing us, bringing up the numbers.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you for turning that heat down.
What's that?
Thank you for turning that heat down.
I did,
Oh, you didn't?
no,
Oh, it's comfortable. in
it went
here.
down on its own. I found some keys maybe, but it seemed to get better. So you're welcome.
Good, thank you.
All right. We get back on. We have we have an item, actually maybe might be two we got to add to the agenda. Should be in the folders. One of them is in regards to selling a vehicle.
Yes, I have that draft.
What is it?
Just-
Police interim Chief Kane had approached. We have a vehicle that is in excess of 2017 that has an excess of 100,000 miles. It's the old K9 car.
Yep.
The town of Hampstead is in need of an ACO vehicle. They've been in contact with them. They've looked at the vehicle and he negotiated to sell it to them with the board approval for $4,000. As well as Hampstead will be paying for to remove all of our equipment, the lettering and the like,
Oh, nice.
which is another $1,500 to $2,000 cost that we don't have to incur.
Perfect.
So that's just looking for approval to sell
To be able to
said vehicle.
Great.
I motion to direct the town manager to sell the 2017 vehicle that was used as a police department as a K-9 car for many years. The vehicle has reached its end of life and usefulness. For our applications, Hampstead Animal Control has looked at the vehicle and they are willing to purchase it for the price of $4,000. Hampstead Animal Control will also have the Plaistow equipment removed from the vehicle as well as all Plaistow lettering. Chief Kane recommends this plan, seconded by.
Harold.
Darrell seconds. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so it passes. Thank you, guys. That one was pretty simple, and then we have one more, right, to add to the agenda? This is from Sanborn Head. This is from,
No, the other one is the Energy Committee.
Oh, the Energy
They're looking
Committee, that
for
was
a
it.
formation of a subcommittee.
Oh, yeah.
Community power formation of subcommittee.
where's the motion on that?
So basically to help develop a program specific to Plaistow's needs with the community power.
So they just, all they're looking for is just a motion to
Yep. All right.
to form a subcommittee.
I move that a community power subcommittee be established with the responsibility of exploring and gathering information related to the implementation of a community power electrical aggregation program for the town of Plaistow. The subcommittee will be comprised of 4 voting members and a selectman ex officio with up to 4 alternate members and the selectman's ex officio alternate. The ex officio would be a voting member of the subcommittee to make up 5 members of voting body. The charter for the subcommittee shall be developed by the board with the assistance of ECOM. Membership qualifications shall be the same as all chartered and appointed boards and committees in the town of Plaistow in accordance with NHRSA.
I'll second that.
Second by John. All right, discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye?
Aye. Opposed, abstained, passes 3-0-0. All right, thanks, we got those out of the way.
The only other that you had written down, the Sanborn Head.
Yep.
I just wanted to, I was in receipt of the draft report, which is for the supplemental, the SSI, the supplemental site investigation that they have been working on up at the fire department. So I took the whole document's 144 pages. I grabbed the first 10 pages for the board's review. When you have time to, to take a look at it. If you would like the other 134 pages, I can certainly either print them or email them to you. But I'm, trying to peruse them myself and get through it. But it is, based on what they have seen, what the data will be that they transmit to the state, and also further work that they are recommending there at the site. It's all encompassing. So
Very good.
this is just for, your
Perusal.
perusal.
So nothing that we got to act on in here or anything like that?
Not at this point, no. They give like an estimated budget. They're recommending, I know, doing a couple of more test wells, around the property and just some additional work. But I believe in the budget that we have prepared, we have enough money to encapsulate all of what they want to do for the upcoming year.
Okay. Perfect. All right, we're on to the approval of the consent agenda. On that, if you saw it go around, we had the manifest.
Yeah.
Approval of the draft minutes. There was 5 abatement requests in there, 1 land use change tax bill, and 1 elderly tax exemption request. We just get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion made?
Second by Jonathan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, 300. And Greg, town manager's report.
Where can I start? So last couple
Find
of
the
weeks,
beginning, middle, and an end.
it been extremely busy. I've had obviously lots of meetings with department heads, with the snow that we've been dealing with, and Dan, thanks to his guys and the like, these slow storms that come up when not even predicted, certainly they tax a 4-person department, let alone a 3-person department, which is what we are right now, which that has also led into the 2010 International Truck developing engine problems. So
That's what he told me, yeah.
that is up at the normal garage to be evaluated, but it will take at least a week in order for it to be evaluated. So Dan has been in contact with surrounding towns, and we're working on borrowing / leasing or renting a extra vehicle so that we can address the snow that's coming tonight and probably the rest of the week.
Yeah, and
So,
Friday too, maybe.
Yep,
Did they have any idea? Any idea what might be wrong with the vehicle?
just the engine.
That's pretty big. That's a pretty wide.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Has he had any
They
luck
need-
getting anybody?
No.
Oh, wow.
So they're working some long hours.
It looks like there's a selectman over there that's got a truck with big enough to put a plow on.
Met with the interim Chief Kane. He's going to work on developing a formal action plan for voting day. I reiterated all of our concerns, given the intersection, to go in the Fish and Game Club and the like. Even if we have to get an extra officer on duty, because I said it will be our luck the way things are going. We'll have a nice snowstorm on the 14th, and then traffic, we know it's probably going to be bad coming out of there, will be even worse. So we're working on getting something down formally so that we'll have a plan. Fire department's been busy. I know there was another structure fire. Busy with water issues. We recently finished up a New Hampshire retirement system audit, which they do every few years. So we've gone from that into audit prep. The auditors are coming in the week of town meeting as well for our annual financial audit. Our host of trash issues that we've had, I guess somewhat normal, not normal. I have a feeling the snow is wreaking havoc on a lot of that as well.
Is it getting any better? The trash are staying the same? Worse?
Different issues.
Yeah, different issues.
They just seem to roll into different issues. So it seems when we solve some that others pop up. So that's it for now.
That's all?
Yeah, that's all.
Nothing else?
Well, I should say we had successful police chief interviews last week. Have narrowed it down to 2 candidates that we will be having in for a second conversation later this week. So
No confirmed date yet, or
Thursday morning at 10 o'clock.
okay, thank you.
and 12.
Okay.
Didn't get a chance to talk to you before the meeting.
All right. I don't think we need a water update. We went through that tonight. Unless you have anything else.
I do not.
All right, Selectmen's reports. You have anything there?
Nothing.
I did attend the rec committee. There wasn't a quorum, so we really couldn't do much at that meeting. But Jen just did ask me to read off some of the things that are going on this week. First of all, the rec office is actually closed for this week of school vacation. On February 3rd, there's an elderly affairs function. It is a movie at the library for 1 p.m. On the 2nd, there is ice skating from 12 to 2 at the Veterans Rink down in Haverhill behind the high school. There's a kids' night out, but it's probably more a parents' relief night. That's on the 3rd at the library. Drop-off is 5:15. Movie starts at 5:30. I don't know the movie. And the pickup time is 7:30. So if you need to get out and have some time with your bride or husband. There is a Celtic celebration coming up on 3/14 at 1 p.m. It includes more movies and stories, and that's a 90-minute show, and that's held at the library. And the last one that they have in March is there's a senior casino trip on 3/21. It's 9 to 3 at the Encore in Boston. You'll have to go on the town website and pull up the sheet and fill out the application so that you're in the mix.
Free $20 worth of chips.
Other than that, I did have a meeting with the Historical Society. I got a couple of donations from the public for them, and we'll be looking to run a function probably at the fishing game as a booster for the Historic Society. So
Nice.
we've got a couple of people that are energetic on that, so hopefully we can get that going.
Good.
And get them some resources so that they can expand their services to the town, or at least hold them as they are.
All right, good. Thank you. For the last several weeks, because we haven't met in about 3 weeks or something like that, right? I attended an Old Home Day meeting. They're really starting to kick everything into gear there. What they're looking for, if we can get some volunteers to actually help with the day itself, with the events and things like that out back. But you'll start seeing, not email blast, but stuff out on social media, Facebook and the like. You'll start seeing things out there. We did have a planning board meeting. And also I attended a scout meeting, which was very interesting. They needed somebody, one of the selectmen, to show up and kind of discuss the government, things like that. And it was pretty interesting. You're talking, kids probably like 8 to 12. They're more aware of things going on in this town than you would think. They were well aware. We had a discussion for about a half hour on the VD site.
All right, good for them.
And they actually were even asking questions on some of the developments going in on town. One of them brought something like the thing going on off Sweet Hill. I was shocked, but it was nice to see.
Right.
That they were engaged. They knew some things going on. It's always nice. The kids are always interesting with that take on things.
That's what Art Linkletter said.
And that was it. And just a few events to mention. This Saturday, March 4th, we have the Norm Major celebration at the Plaistow Fishing Game on 18 May Ray, and that will go from 2 to 6. So come on out. It's basically like an open house. Come see Norm. That's a man who's dedicated many years to this town.
He has. Well deserved.
And we still see him on election day, too. He's still there on those dates. Also, the town report dedication will be held next Monday at the Board of Selectmen meeting on next Monday, which is March 6th at 6 o'clock. Public's welcome to attend that. Make the announcement who the report's dedicated to. Also coming up next week on Tuesday, March 7th is Candidates Night at the Plaistow Library at 6:30. There will be a meet and greet with the candidates that will start at 6 o'clock. And also the reminder for Election Day is also coming up on Tuesday, March 14th. And make a note of it that the time and the location has changed. The election will now take place at the Plaistow Fish and Game Club. If you can, go online, you'll see Bob Hobb, with the help of Dean Zanello, did a
Yeah.
quick video on it to show exactly where to enter. And the time now for voting is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. All right, anybody else have any other business? Do we have any non-public or anything? Good answer, Greg.
No need.
All right, and with that, we'll close the meeting at 7:22.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.